Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of Chronicled, the History of NUFC. Think of this as the full stop on our 30 episode podcast series covering the entire 140-year history of Newcastle United. Episode 30 came out last week covering the period of 2019 up to January 2022. So that was Steve Bruce, the takeover, and the hopefully exciting future that lies in wait for Newcastle United. And today we're going to reflect on some of the all-time greats who've played for the club by revealing a short list of players from which Paul Joannou, the club's official historian and co-host of Chronicled, is going to put his neck on the line and select his greatest all-time Newcastle United 11. And at the end, I'll reveal how you can select your all-time greatest 11, listener, and where and when we'll reveal the results from fans' votes. So, Paul, thanks for doing this bonus episode for us today. What we've done is produce a short list of around 6 players in every position in a 4-4-2 formation, plus a manager shortlist, and we'll run through the positions, the individual names, and then you can reveal your personal choice for each position. I've made your life difficult because I know you wanted to do this in 4-3-3, and I've done it in 4-4-2. So selecting 2 forwards, as we're going to find out, is extremely difficult. But we've tried to be as broad as possible with the shortlist, mixing the 20th century and 21st century Newcastle players. I don't think any 19th century players made the shortlist, but obviously not many of us will have seen pre-World War II players, so naturally late 20th century and 21st century players are going to feature a little bit more heavily probably in fans' overall 11s. But that said, hopefully we've done our job and stressed how great and influential players like Jimmy Lawrence, Colin Veitch and Neil Harris were, so maybe they will feature in some of your team's listeners. Let's hope so. So Paul, let's kick things off with the goalkeeper shortlist. I'll read this out. There's 6 names here: Ronnie Simpson, Willie McFall, Jimmy Lawrence, Pavel Srnicek, and Shay Given, and Tim Krul.
Yeah, well, first of all, before I pick a goalkeeper, I've got to say that it's very difficult to select Newcastle's greatest ever side. I would add that I reckon that any of these great players from eras long gone could have played in modern football. They would have been fitter than in the past, perhaps, but all of them would have adapted for sure because they were very special players. And in these selections, there's lots of top players, not even in the shortlist. So, it is an extremely difficult task. But in terms of goalkeepers, I suppose that's one position that Newcastle have never really had a lot of really, what you would class world-class goalkeepers. So for me, it's a pretty easy pick, and that's Shay Given, who won over 100 caps for his country and played 463 times for Newcastle, and it would have been a bit more had it not been for a bit of a fallout when he departed.
Yeah, probably the best I've ever seen play for Newcastle. Also, a word for Jimmy Lawrence, who has the record appearances, and Willie McFall as well, who won was in goal when they won the first cup.
Yeah, there's a lot of good goalkeepers, McFall and Lawrence, of course, who won the Championship and FA Cup finals galore in the 1900s, and Ronnie Simpson, who was pretty small. He was pretty small for a goalkeeper, but such a great career both at Newcastle and then much later as a veteran with Glasgow Celtic.
Yeah.
So yes, there's some good keepers there, but Shay Given has the pick for me without doubt.
There you go. Congratulations, Shay. You're in. So on to defence then. Right back we'll start with. Again, probably not blessed with a fantastic list of right backs, world-class level. Maybe you'll disagree, Paul, but we have 5 names here. Bill Mccracken, David Craig, Bobby Cowell, Irving Nattrass and Warren Borton. Who have you gone for?
Well, I think we've been pretty well blessed in the fullback positions over the years. And I've gone for Bill Mccracken, who is a legendary figure in the game. There's not many players who can say was the cause of changing the football rules, and Mccracken was one of them when he forced a change in the offside law, and he was a quite extraordinary footballer. a character, and he played for Newcastle an awful long time, 444 games for the club, and he gets the nod. Some other very good fullbacks: Bobby Cowell, 3 FA Cup winners, medals alongside Milburn and Mitchell, and David Craig, a particular favourite of mine from the 70s, some good players in that position, to be honest.
Yeah. And a special mention for Warren Borton, who was a guest on the show and was very briefly the most expensive English fullback or English defender for a time, he held a transfer record at Newcastle until Wes Ferdinand arrived.
He was the most expensive defender when he joined Newcastle as a record signing, but he was only a record signing for about 2 or 3 days. Les Ferdinand beat that a little bit later.
Yeah, so go back and listen to Warren's episode, and also go back to listen to episode 9 where we talk about Bill Mccracken with Harry Pearson and the influence he had on the actual rules of football, because he became so adept at defending and springing off side traps. On to left back then. Here are the names: Frank Hudspeth, Jack Carr, Alf McMichael, Frank Clark, and John Beresford.
Well, again, some very good players in the left back position. Hudspeth was for a long time Newcastle's choice and played with Bill Mccracken in that offside trap. Jack Carr was from the 1900s and he played for England. Alf McMichael, a very cultured, classy fullback from the 1950s, FA Cup winner, and for a long time Newcastle United's most capped player, playing for Northern Ireland and captain of club and country. Frank Clark, partner to David Craig for many a year in the 70s, very underrated but solid performer in Bez. In that entertainers lineup, he was just great going forward, and could join in the attack frequently. I've gone for Alf McMichael because really the stuff I've read about him, some of the top players of the game, including Stanley Matthews, said that he was the very best fullback he played against, and he could raise his game against the really top defenders, and that goes a long way when someone like Matthews says that McMichael's one of the best. So he gets my nod to make an all-Ireland fullback pairing.
Yeah, of course. And an Irish goalkeeper. So centre-backs, we need 2 names from this shortlist, Paul, of Charlie Spencer, Jack Hill, Frank Brennan, Bob Moncur, Glenn Roeder, Philippe Albert, Jonathan Woodgate. Yeah,
well, the 2 modern or the 2 very modern players there, Albert and Woodgate, were really exceptional. Albert, many fans' favourite of that entertainers era, and Jonathan Woodgate, when he joined us, had he not been injured so often, he would have become one of the best, if not the best, centre half that we've ever had. Charlie Spencer and Jack Hill. Jack Hill captained England as well as Newcastle, and Glenn Roeder was such a cultured attacking defender who would have fitted the modern football so well these days. But I've gone for Frank Brennan and Bob Moncur. Frank Brennan, without doubt, everybody I've spoken to, and when I met the guy, he was such a superb personality, and as a player, he was just a rocket centre half, and him, alongside fellow Scot Bob Moncur, I'm sure would have made an absolutely brilliant centre half pairing. Moncur was commanding. He was organizer. He was an organizer, and never say die spirit. So I've gone for Frank Brennan and Bob Moncur.
Great choices. Into midfield then, this is where it starts to get interesting. We've split it up into right midfield, left midfield, and central midfield. We'll start with right midfield. The shortlist reads Jimmy Schooler, Jimmy Howie, Joe Harvey, George Wilson, Jackie Rutherford, Chris Waddle, Keith Gillespie, and Norberto Solano.
Well, midfield and attack are really difficult to make choices from. And I would have selected a 4-3-3 formation to give a little bit of flexibility, and we'll come to that problem when we hit the attackers. But I need to pick a 4-4-2 lineup, and it's really very difficult, as I've said. But on the right of midfield, bearing in mind that long ago it was right wingers, but the old style right winger has now become a right midfield player, and I've gone for Jackie Rutherford, who was with Newcastle United right through the Edwardian Masters era and played for England, a regular with the England setup, played in every single FA Cup final and League Championship side. And when a winger scores 94 goals in 336 games for the club, you've got to be really at the top level. So I've gone for Rutherford, and there's lots of other good names in there. Totally in contrast, Jimmy Schooler. In a selection I made a little while ago, I had Schooler in my midfield in a 4-3-3 lineup because I wanted somebody with a real gritty character on the field, and he was a bit like Roy Keane, and someone like that would be great in midfield, but he doesn't get into this 4-4-2 lineup. And there's some very decent footballers there from the right of midfield, including Nobby Solano, who was brilliant for us over several seasons.
Indeed, yeah. Switching to the left then, left midfield shortlist reads Peter McWilliam, Bobby Mitchell, Tom MacDonald, Sam Weaver, Terry Hibbett, David Gindler, and Lauren Robert.
Well, what a list. McWilliam was a class act in the 1900s. Tom MacDonald, class act in the 1920s and scored lots of goals. Sammy Weaver played for England, a marvellous midfielder. Terry Hibbett in the 70s with his left foot with supplying Supermac. And then two Frenchmen, Ginola and Robert, both favourites of mine and both match winners. But to be honest, the one that stands out amongst all those really top players is Bobby Mitchell. I never saw him play. I did meet him. I actually played for his pub side on a few occasions at Cradlewell in my younger days. But Bobby Mitchell, 410 appearances and 113 goals for a winger who later in his career moved back into midfield, and he won the cup 3 times for Newcastle United and was on countless occasions the match winner. So it's got to be Bobby Mitchell, Bobby Dazzler.
That's a good claim to fame, playing for his pub team. Was he the manager, or did he just run the pub?
He just ran the pub. He wasn't the manager of the side, but he was around now and again in the pub afterwards. But yeah.
Very good, very good. Central midfield then. Got a list of 10 names here, and we need 2 for your team. The list reads Colin Veitch, Tony Green, Rob Lee, Wilf Lowe, Andy Aitken, Paul Gascoigne, Ivor Allchurch, Gary Speed, Johan Cabaye, Hatem Ben Arfa.
Yeah, it's starting to get really difficult. There's 1 or 2 early players there. Colin Veitch, of course, played right through the 1900s, and a very famous Novocastrin, alongside Wilf Lowe and Andy Aitken, who's the earliest of all our selection. He started in the 1890s. Later, we've got Ivor Allchurch, superb Welsh international schemer. And then later, more up to modern times, Johan Cabaye and Gary Speed, Ben Arfa, and of course Paul Gascoigne, who didn't stay an awful long time at Newcastle, but of course became a huge star. But I've gone for 2 real box-to-box players who've got energy and could score goals, Rob Lee and Tony Green. I would have had Peter Beardsley in this midfield, in central midfield, but unfortunately he's in the forward attacking options, so I couldn't put Peter in. But Tony Green's a more than adequate replacement, probably my all-time favourite player from the time I've watched Newcastle since 1965. Rob Lee, a bit underrated to many outside Newcastle, but during those Premier League years when he was playing, you couldn't do anything wrong at Newcastle. 381 appearances and 56 goals. So I've gone for Lee Green in the centre of midfield.
Yeah, two great choices, and very difficult, but it's about to get more difficult as we move on to the forwards. It's pretty much impossible to pick just two from this incredible list that we've whittled down to 12 legends. We can only have two. It's a 4-4-2 formation. Brutal, I know, but it just shows the calibre of forwards that we've had at Newcastle over the decades. So let me read this list out of some amazing names here, starting with Albert Shepherd, Neil Harris, Hughie Gallagher, Jackie Milburn, George Robledo, Len White, Malcolm MacDonald, Kevin Keegan, Peter Beardsley, Andy Cole, Les Ferdinand, and Alan Shearer.
Yeah, it is impossible to select only two. And as I said before, I would have had three up front with Peter Beardsley selected, who would, of course, also be able to drop back into midfield. But in reality, he doesn't even get selected because he's not in the midfield choice, and he doesn't get one of the two places in the attacking side, which is absolutely dreadful because Peter is just next to Tony Green, my favourite Newcastle United player. But
sorry, Peter. Sorry,
he's joined with good company because Jackie Milburn doesn't even get in either. So it's a real problem area. But my two picks are Hughie Gallagher and Alan Shearer. And nobody can tell me that Gallagher cannot be in the Newcastle United all-time great 11 because of his record, both at St James's Park and elsewhere. At Newcastle, 143 goals in only 174 games, and then his overall career record, 463 goals in 624 matches. So, and he was one of the all-time greats of football. And what more can be said about Alan Shearer, the modern top centre forward by many a mile. He was the ideal leader up front, and Newcastle United's all-time record goal scorer with 206 goals. So those two are my attacking spearhead. And as I say, no Jackie Milburn, no Malcolm MacDonald, no Peter Beardsley. It's remarkable, really.
It's tough. But we'll let you have some impact subs, Paul. You can have 7 subs: a goalkeeper, 2 defenders, 2 midfielders, and 2 forwards. If we allowed you that bench, who would make it?
Right. Well, Willie McFall is the goalkeeper. And the 2 defenders, centre-half Jack Hill, who captained club and country, and David Craig, such a cultured right-back. In midfield, Ivor Allchurch, who was a great midfielder, creator, and Jimmy Schooler, when we needed some physicality and some grit on the field, he could come on and do his thing and also spray balls around the field like he could. And up front, great choice of substitutes, but I've got Peter Beardsley and Jackie Milburn. And Beardsley could also obviously come on for midfield, and Milburn, although usually recognised as a centre forward, could also play on the wing as well. So we've got a very versatile substitutes bench there.
Yes, heck of a bench. And lastly, a manager. We've put a shortlist together of 5 names. Again, this isn't very easy. The names we have are Frank Watt, Joe Harvey, Kevin Keegan, Sir Bobby Robson, and Rafa Benitez. Yeah,
well, Frank Watt wasn't really a manager as we know it today. He was a secretary manager, if you like, a chief executive, we would call them today. So he doesn't really figure in my list of actually managing a football team. The others, Joe Harvey, long-time servant in Newcastle and Newcastle's most successful manager, to be frank. Kevin Keegan, what can you say about Kev? Great entertainers and all that. Rafa and Bobby Robson, and my pick's Sir Bobby Robson because of what he has done in football and his experience and his know-how and the respect everybody had for him, and he produced a very good lineup at Newcastle United.
He did, yes. Good choice, not an easy choice, but Bobby Robson is your manager. So I'll quickly run through your team, Paul, remind listeners who you went for. So in goal you picked Shay Given, right back Bill Mccracken, left back Alf McMichael, centre backs of Frank Brennan and Bob Moncur. The midfield you went for, right midfield Jackie Rutherford, left midfield Bobby Mitchell, central midfielders Tony Green, Rob Lee, and then up front Hughie Gallagher and Alan Shearer. So there we have it. Newcastle United's official club historian Paul Joannou has picked his ultimate Newcastle United 11 in 4-4-2. It would be slightly different if the 4-3-3 formation was allowed. He's picked his manager and his subs. That's a very considered team, and based on 60 plus years of watching the team, Paul, plus many years.
1964, so whatever that is.
Yeah, it's a lot, and of course many years spent writing and researching all the eras that went before it. Just a bit of fun, of course, to round off the series, but now it's over to the listeners. We're inviting as many fans as possible to pick their ultimate Newcastle 11 in 4-4-2 from the shortlists we've discussed. There's a link in the show notes where you can find an article I've written for this episode, and within that is a special interactive form where you can log your selection. So get voting, and I'll reveal Fans 11 next week on chroniclelive.co.uk. There won't be an episode of Chronicled, but there will be an article next Wednesday online, so keep an eye out for that. Make sure you follow our Twitter at Chronicle NUFC. Follow me too at Ketchell on Twitter. I'll tweet a link from both of those handles next week to the article that reveals fans' choices. So Paul, that's officially that. Chronicled, the history of Newcastle United. I will say that Chronicled may be back in a slightly different format later in 2022, so perhaps not technically the end, but the series is over for now. So thanks everyone for listening and sharing links and feedback and sending in questions and anecdotes, and of course thanks to all of our special guests. I'd like to say a special thanks to Paul Brown, Alex Jackson, Dan Jackson, Harry Pearson, Stephen Allett, Bill Swan, Alan Candlish, Michael Chaplin, Bob Moncur, Malcolm MacDonald, John Gibson, Rob Mason, John Anderson, Mark Corby, Lee Clark, Warren Borton, Keith Gillespie, Olivia Bernard, Mark Douglas, and Lee Ryder. And lastly, Paul, special thanks to you for agreeing to do this with me. It's been amazing to listen to your expertise every week. It's been a labour of love for sure at times, but I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Yep, yeah, it's been a pleasure, very interesting, and we've got to look forward to the future now and see what happens.
Maybe we'll reconvene in 10 years' time and take us up to 150 years. But I definitely have a bigger appreciation for the history of the club now and a much rounder knowledge of it. And I hope you do as well, listener. That was the main aim. Of course, we encourage you to stay subscribed to the Everything is Black and White podcast via whichever platform you choose to listen to your podcasts on. And yes, Chronicled is done for the time being, but there's loads of new shows on our platform to listen to every week. So keep an ear out for them. And if you want to listen back or watch back video versions of Chronicled, you can do so. They're all uploaded to our YouTube channel, which is called the eIBWpodcast. And if you've enjoyed listening to Chronicled, please could you leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? It would be great to read those, and the 5-star rating on there and on Spotify will really help the podcast massively. So if you have a minute to do that, we'd appreciate it. And of course, stay up to date with all the Newcastle United news that we put out on Chronicle Live by subscribing to our daily Newcastle United newsletters, completely free. And there's a link to sign up in the show notes. If you tap that, select Sport, Newcastle United Updates, enter your email address, you'll be signed up to receive all our best Newcastle United content from Chronicle Live every single day. So lastly, thank you so much for listening to this special bonus episode of Chronicled, the history of Newcastle United, with me, Matt Ketchell, and Paul Joannou.